Welcome to the 2020 Farm Business Management Financial Analysis Webinar Series. My name is Dvergsten, Farm Business Management Instructor on the Thief River Falls campus of Northland Community and Technical College. We usually hold these annual summary meetings in person, but for the second year in a row, we're having to adapt to a digital webinar series due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. Hopefully, with the current vaccine rollouts that are currently taking place, we'll be able to be back more normal this coming season with in-person instruction and face-to-face meetings. So let's hope for the best. As you see on the screen, we've developed a 6-part series on the 2020 analysis data. Today, I'll be reviewing the Northwest or Northland College major crop reports, primarily focusing, I guess, on corn, soybeans, and wheat, along with some 3- and 5-year crop historical reports from our Northern Summary book as well. So to get started, I'm going to begin here on page 3 of our Northern Minnesota Summary book, which when I say Northern Minnesota, that includes students from Northland College, Central Lakes College, some from the St. Cloud area, and some from the Alexandria area, and some from Ridgewater. So basically I-95 north. In that database, we have 577 farms, and this is some whole farm information here, which I'm just going to touch on for probably 15 seconds. But I just wanted to point out here that you can see that we've had relatively flat net farm incomes over the last 7 years. And this year we were up quite substantially. Now, some of the reasons for that are related to the cropping side of the equation, which is why I wanted to just quickly touch on it. But, you know, it says many factors contributed to this increase, including higher yields for most of our crops, higher selling prices for most of our crops, a variety of government program payments designed to assist farmers with challenging marketing prices and conditions, and disaster payments for previous year grown crops. In other words, WIP. A lot of that money came in 2020 as well for 2018 and 19 damages or crop losses. So you can see the the average net farm income was a little bit over double what it was the previous year, and even higher than many of the other years, but double what it was in 2019. So now moving into the crop information, here is the past 3 years of corn, soybeans, and wheat for northern Minnesota. Starting with the corn up here, here's 18, 19, 20 for the corn on the top. You see the yield in 2019 was 156.7. We're up to 172 in 2020. So, you know, that's about what, 16 bushel per acre increase there in production. If you go to the price, we're up about 43 cents per bushel in price. The average price on the 2019 crop was 342. Up to 385 for the average price in northern Minnesota for the 2020 corn crop. So the gross revenue then you see 605 up to 710, $105 per acre increase over the prior year. I do want to point out that gross revenue does include any crop insurance as well as government payment income as well. So for example, if you took 172 bushels at 385, it would be 600 and some dollars of revenue. So the rest of that revenue is coming from those other sources. So you look at the net return on that corn and you see it's up quite substantial. We're up $107 an acre. We had a very, excuse me, a very marginal $11.50 net return in 2019 on our corn crop in northern Minnesota. And the year before that was actually an $8 per acre loss. And in 2020, we're at a positive 118. So that is quite substantial. So 118.9 bushel per, excuse me, not bushels, dollars. The net return was $118.90 per acre for 2020 corn crop in northern Minnesota. Moving on to the soybeans, you see there that the yield was up as well. Similar percentage, 3.2 bushel increase from 37 up to 40.3. You see a bigger difference here on the value per unit or the price of the soybean crop. Our 2019 crop averaged $8.22. Our 20 crop is averaging $10.01. Look at the gross revenue then. That is up $76 an acre from 370 to 446. And just like the corn, the net return on the soybeans is up quite substantially from a $35 return in 19 up to 106 in 2020, which is just a little bit below the corn. So this is the first year that the corn actually did outperform the soybeans as far as net return per acre, but it was close, within $12 per acre there. Then if you go to the wheat, this is the only crop out of the major three crops that we typically deal with here in northern Minnesota. We're actually down 4 bushel an acre in terms of average production, that is. The average production of wheat in 2019 was 60.7 bushels per acre versus 56.5 last year. Again, though, we do see a higher price on the 2020 crop versus the 2019, a 40-cent differential there. So if you go over to net return, pretty similar to the year before, even though the production was down 4 bushels, $36 net return in 2019, 23.5 in 2020. So basically this year, corn led the way, followed by beans, and wheat quite a ways behind. Last year, however, wheat actually was the leader, went from best to worst, I guess. 36, soybeans was really close at 35 last year, and the corn at 11. So, and then, the year before that, corn and wheat were negative, and soybeans was the only positive. So kind of all over the board there. All right, moving on to page 29 of our Northern Summary book. Looking at some of the same information in a graph format. So here you see the corn yields, up from 156 to 172 in yield there. If you look at the total direct expenses on the on the corn, basically flat from 2019 to 2020, just a $1 per acre difference there. I do expect that'll be a little higher in 2021, but the good news is we're going to have a lot higher planting price, and hopefully we'll be selling the 21 crop at a lot higher values as well. But we do know that we're looking at a little higher fuel costs, a little higher fertilizer costs, and a little higher crop insurance premium expenses and so on, due to a little bit better revenue guarantee as we go into the 21 crop production. So anyway, the costs from 19 to 20 basically flat. If you look at the wheat and the soybeans, basically flat there as well. You're looking at about $340 per acre total cost to raise an acre of wheat, and about $340 cost, just under $340 cost per acre to raise an acre of soybeans. Okay, the next screen then, I'm going to go into our actual Northland College farm crop numbers. I mentioned in the Northern report there was 577 farms in that report. 54% of those farms came from Northland College students. Those 312, or 54% of those students, are what you see on these following reports. So first, I'm going to look at the crop production and marketing summary reports here for the Northland College students that were in that report. The average crop size for the farms from Northland College students that were in the report was 1,547 acres. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is the machinery investment per crop acre. For the average farm, out of those 312 farms, the average machinery investment is $451 per acre. Now, obviously, since that's an average, there's farms up at $650, and there's some down at $250, $300. You kind of want to see where do you fall in regards to that. And then we also want to look at, when I get to the corn, beans, and wheat report, we'll look at the machinery cost per acre. This is the machinery investment per acre. We also track the machinery cost per acre, which shows up on your individual crop enterprise analysis. It's nice to look at the averages, but you really need to know what your number is and then compare back to the averages, to see, is there any improvement that can be made there, or, is it okay to upgrade my combine or my major tillage equipment or my planter? Are my costs still in line? Is my investment per acre still in line with other growers in the region? The other thing found on this crop production and marketing summary Here is a listing of the actual cash sales prices received by farmers when selling commodities in 2020. So this would be a combination of 2019 and 2020 crop sales during the 2020 calendar year. There could even be some 2018 crop possibly sold here in the 2020 year as well, but it's certainly not all 2020 crop. Matter of fact, I would say the majority of it is 19 crop. But you see, soybeans, the average price received for sales in 2020 was $8.67, wheat just below $5 at $4.97, and corn at $3.16. Okay, now moving on then to the actual crop reports. So for those of you who raise corn, you'll be interested in this report. There's 93 corn growers out of our Northland College student base that have had data that went into this report. The average yield from those 93 farms was 159.7, just a shade under 160 bushel an acre, which is pretty good for our area. The average value per bushel ended up being, believe it or not, right at $4. Now, some of that 2020 production was sold in the fall. Much of that production is sitting on ending inventory with a reasonable market price established on it on January 1. And some of those bushels on inventory are also contracted. So the dollar value is exactly known on those bushels. So if you look at the gross return per acre on that 160 bushel corn crop, it's at $683 per acre. Excuse me. Now the high profit group, you see their production was up about 16 bushel higher at 175.7 bushel per acre, a little higher value per bushel as well. So probably took advantage of a few more marketing opportunities. They're at $4.37 per average bushel versus $4 for the average. So the gross revenue of $683 on the average is up at $812 on the high profit group. You know, so you're looking at what, $125 increase in gross revenue for that group. And obviously it starts with the 16 additional bushels, but also, like I said, a little higher marketing price as well. Then if we drop down and look at our net returns, again, pretty good year for corn production in Northwest Minnesota as well as Northern Minnesota. The average of those 93 farms had a net return of about $109.30 an acre, $138 per acre with all the government income. So the government payment income down here would be any ARC PLC income plus the CFAP 1 income. The CFAP 2 income, by the way, I should have pointed that out when I was up top here. CFAP 2, which was a flat $15 per acre or slightly higher on corn and wheat based on your farm's APH. The CFAP 2 numbers showed up in other crop income at the top of the report here, just above the gross return. Any CSP would also show up on that line. So the CFAP 1 is down below here in the government payment because that was so many cents per bushel, similar to the PLC. Net return with government payments was $138 per acre for the average corn grower and $301 for that high profit group. So again, those extra 16 bushels and 37 cents per bushel higher selling price makes quite a difference. I mean, that's, you know, you're talking about $162 or $3 an acre increase there on the net return. So then if you drop down and look at cost of production per bushel. Now, personally, I always like to drop right down to the one that includes your labor and management because we have to make a living on that farm and we have to pay our taxes. So there are instances where you may want to look at, you know, just covering your direct and overhead expenses, but typically I do like to include that labor and management. So that 160 bushel corn crop, the average cost of production, including labor and management, was $3.40 per bushel. Now that high profit group, which did have the higher gross revenue, higher yield, was down at $2.93. Now again, the only cost of production numbers that really matter are your own. So I encourage you to pull out your own enterprise analysis. I assume you probably already reviewed that with your instructor when you did your analysis. But that is what you really want to be looking at, is what is the cost of production to produce a bushel of wheat, beans, corn on your own farm? Because that's the numbers you need to have available and in your head when you're trying to make profitable sales for your business. The only other thing on each of these reports that I want to point your attention to, on the previous page, I talked a little bit about machinery investment per acre, which is a way that you can kind of benchmark where you fall in compared to, other like farms in your region. Because, that's one of the questions we get asked, do you feel I have, more equipment than I probably should for the size of my farm? Would it make sense for me to upgrade my planter or my combine, or do you think I should put that off another year or two? Or, we get asked questions like that. When we're trying to help farmers answer those questions, two of the things that we do look at is that machinery investment per acre, as well as your machinery cost per acre. This machinery cost per acre that you see right here, this $128.35 per acre on the corn, that is a result of 6 cost line items: fuel, repairs, machinery hire, machinery debt, and machinery depreciation. Those are the 6 expense line items that show up in that number. So, I mean, if you're, within 10% of that, you probably don't have anything to worry about. On the other hand, if you're up at $180, $200 machine cost per acre on corn, maybe we need to take a look at, what adjustments potentially could be made to bring that number a little bit more in line with your neighbors, basically. Because the higher that number is, it's just cutting into this net return up here of 109. If this was 168 instead of 128, you'd have to shave $40 off your net return, basically. Okay, moving on to the soybeans. Just like the corn, our yield from 2020 was up as compared to the year before. So our Northland College students averaged 36.99, call it 37 bushel soybeans. The average price on that crop was $10, and the gross return is $419, basically, $418.81. Again, the high profit group is about 7 bushel higher at 43 bushel per acre. So therefore, the gross revenue is up about $100 an acre at $520. Dropping down to the net return then on the soybeans, again, a pretty good year in Northwest Minnesota. The average soybean grower had a net return of $82, 106 if you include all government sources of income. So 106 with all government sources of income. And the corn, if you remember back up here, was 138 with all the government income. Okay, now if you look at the net return on that high profit group, the 106 turns into 209, so $103 advantage to that high profit group. Again, that high profit group had 7 more bushel of production per acre. Dropping down the cost of production, that 37 bushel average soybean crop came in with a $7.90 per bushel cost of production, and that includes labor and management. So you can see going into 2021 now, where we've got pricing opportunities, right around that $12 per bushel mark, we're around $4 per bushel profit if we lock prices in on our production at this time. And time will tell what that market does going forward. But, I think $12 is a price, I guess, I'd like to at least start pricing grain if you haven't already. Okay, machinery cost per acre, again, this is your fuel, repairs, and machine hire and so on. $75 per acre basically on soybeans. So again, just kind of take a look at where you're at. If you're in that, 68 to 85 range, you're probably just fine. If you're getting up in that 90 to 120 range, again, maybe we need to look at what adjustments could be made potentially to bring that number down. Okay, now last but certainly not least is our wheat. I guess it was the least net return last year, but some years it's our leading crop. But nonetheless, our Northland farmers averaged 59 bushel wheat. That's 165 different farms averaged a 59 bushel wheat crop. And again, please keep in mind that's an average. Some were over 70, some were down in the in around 40. You know, this was one of those years where we saw a lot of variance in the wheat crop due to different moisture situations and different rainfall patterns and so on and so forth. Some of the wheat crop just didn't get off to a very good start, planted in pretty saturated soils, and then getting pummeled with rain early in the growing season in many areas. But with that being said, 59 bushels is still a fairly surprising average considering the difficulties that some folks did have with the wheat crop this past year. So the gross return on that 59 bushel crop was $380 an acre, and that's at $5.50 wheat, $5.50 per bushel. The high profit group was up about 9 bushel higher at 68, and the selling price a little higher again at 571. Okay, so dropping down here to net return, you see that the average farmer was $35 net return with government payments, $35.50. Again, that high profit group, that 35 is all the way up to 125, 124.58 to be exact. And I guess on all of these reports, I didn't point this out on the corn and soybeans, but you see the labor and management charges in here. So basically that's your living draw that you need to pay from the farm, as well as taxes that need to be paid. It should be that number. So the bottom line net return over labor and management, that's your profit after all farm expenses and personal living expenses that needed to be pulled out of the farm. So that's what builds equity on farmers' balance sheets. $7 per acre is building equity on the balance sheet. And that high profit group is $3 per acre that's growing equity on the balance sheet. Okay, dropping down to the cost of production on the wheat then, that 59 bushel wheat crop came in with an average cost of production of $5.43 per bushel. Again, take a look at your own, see where you're at. That's the number that's most important for you going forward. Because again, you can see what 9 extra bushels means to that cost of production. The high profit group is at $4.35 cost of production. So, you know, $5.50 wheat makes you a pretty decent profit if you're in that high profit group with a cost of production of $4.35. $5.50 wheat doesn't give you much of a profit if your cost of production is $5.43, like the average. That's only 7 cents per bushel of profit. And the last thing that I wanted to point out here again is the machinery cost per acre. Very similar to the soybeans. The soybeans were just under 75 an acre. The wheat was just over 75 per acre. So basically you're looking at $75, $80 per acre is kind of the typical machinery cost per acre on wheat and beans, and around that $120, $30 per acre on corn. So with that, I guess that's pretty much what I was going to cover in this particular section of the webinar series. We do have 5 other sessions. I hope that you're able to take those in as well. But I do thank you for your participation in this webinar series. And here's wishing to a safe and productive year ahead in 2021. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.